Welcome to Verily's voice message while you are out. Our weekly news roundup featuring me, Mary Rose Somarriba, editor-in-chief of Verily Magazine, and our associate editor, Margaret Brady, here with me in the Cleveland office. Hello, Maggie.
Hi, Mary Rose. So excited to do this with you again.
Yes, this has been so fun, even just one weekend. We are glad to have you listeners with us. So let's jump into this week's news. There was some rumble at Bumble. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so Bumble, which is a dating app, they've had some problems with their stock price lately. So they are trying to redo their image. They had this ad campaign mocking celibacy and specifically aimed at celibate women. They had billboard ads saying, "A vow of celibacy is not the answer," and "Thou shalt not give up on dating and become a nun." Really crazy stuff.
Oh my gosh.
On social media, immediate pushback because this is incredibly tone deaf. I mean, can you imagine you're driving down the street and you see a billboard critiquing your choosing not to have an active sex life?
Not comfortable having sex or with a particular person or at that certain time of her life, or is waiting till marriage, that she would be getting bullied by these ads. That's so outrageous. Not to mention the poor religious sisters out there. We see enough sexualized imagery everywhere telling us that it's cool, etc. We don't need further messages pushing us to feel that we have to act a certain way in relationships.
Yeah, like how dare women have high standards.
Right.
I mean, it really underlines, this is a business they're running. And, women's sexuality, I guess men's sexuality too, if they're on this app, is a profit center for them. And it's basically the bottom line. They wound up, they're removing the ads. They're giving a donation to the National Domestic Violence Helpline. They made an apology. They said, "Our ads referencing celibacy were an attempt to lean into a community frustrated by modern dating. And instead of bringing joy and humor, we unintentionally did the opposite." They said, "Celibacy can have a particular meaning and importance, which should not be diminished. And we're aware that for many, celibacy can be brought on by harm and trauma."
When it said the trauma, it reminds me of a piece we did years ago with Terry Crews and his wife. He admitted to having a porn addiction. The two of them have since come out with a book on Audible that they co-wrote together. And they talk about how his porn addiction that she discovered was in their marriage was like a traumatic discovery, a betrayal. And so she had a part of her healing process, a part of the healing process of their marriage was a 90-day fast or celibate period. Now Monet shared remarks in 2017. She said, "We should consider stopping having sex." She said, "I love men, but evil men, I will not tolerate that. You do not deserve to be in my presence." She said, "We have to realize our power and our magic." A lot of uproar came out after that with people referring to it as a modern day Lysistrata. But I thought she was onto something. There's research that shows that when a dating couple, postpones their first sexual encounter by a certain number of months, I'll look this up and we can include it in our notes, it leads to better results in the relationship. So there clearly is a benefit to celibacy at some point in a relationship, even in a relationship that's romantic and that's marriage bound. If a dating site is discouraging it, that's just disappointing.
Their original gimmick for their business model was that women on the app would make the first move. Men on the app weren't allowed to slide into your DMs, being weird. Ladies were in control. And they've recently dropped that too. So wrong direction for Bumble.
I have to point everyone back to this great book whose author has been a writer at Verily and a contributor in different ways. Christine Emba's book, Rethinking Sex, which it's fairly recent. And we had her in a great conversation at Verily, in a video panel discussion. Christine writes a lot about how we should get back to what feels true to us and what matters to us in relationships rather than what everyone else is doing or what we think everyone else is doing or others are telling us to do. So at Verily, we're all about getting back to you, what's true to you, and to not feel pushed around by whether it's a billboard ad or a partner in a relationship or the media everywhere that shows you all sorts of sexualized imagery. You are worth more than that. And we encourage you to get back in touch with yourself and be yourself in whatever circumstance or state in life you're in. Other bad news. David Copperfield, there was some allegations that came out, or at least got under lots of scrutiny this week.
So far, at least 16 women have come forward and said David Copperfield, the magician, sexually abused them, accusing him of groping them, drugging them, grooming them, even raping them. This is all part of an investigation that The Guardian, which is a newspaper in the United Kingdom, they have a U.S. edition, and it's their U.S. team doing this investigation. But some of these stories in the Guardian report are just so disturbing. He has one girl who goes by Carla. She says she was at a show and she was called up on stage when she was 15 years old. And he was doing a trick with her. And then afterward, he caught up with her and her mom in the parking lot, gave her a business card, and told her, "I'll be back when you're 18." And then later on, he kept on in touch with her. He gave her a Valentine's Day balloon with a little note that says, "I'll be back in 2 years."
Goodness gracious.
And he was back in 2 years.
That kind of encounter would make me want to be celibate.
Right. Women have good reasons. Another woman reports that she thinks he put something in her drink. She blacked out. Her friend as well. There's just a lot of bad reports here.
Is there any kind of legal action being taken?
There's not yet. His lawyers obviously are pushing back on this, but there have not been any legal consequences for him.
When these kind of stories come out, we always think, it just helps women to know that they can share their stories too and be watchful for these kinds of things. Sometimes I've been at my college, there was this kind of thing where women would share their stories. And at first I scoffed at them and thought, this is like a complaining fest about everything that went wrong ever. And then I listened to it once and I realized that I had experienced something along these lines. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes we need to stop and realize these things aren't okay. We can feel like, what did I do to give an impression or this or that? And anyone who's experienced anything like these, it's not okay. And you're not alone. We encourage you to get the healing you need.
A lot of these guys assume if they wait until the person is 18 years old, just because somebody's 18 doesn't mean every act with them is consensual.
And that's, again, another point back to Christine Emba's book, Rethinking Sex, because the whole thesis of the book sort of comes from the perspective of consent is not enough. To look beyond our low bar we've been using of consent or age of consent and look deeper into what we need to rethink sex, basically. Go check out the book. In other news this week, there was a story out of the UK about birth trauma.
There is an inquiry by the parliament there into traumatic birth and mistreatment in the maternity section of the National Health Service, which is what they call their nationalized health care as NHS. So they found that about 1 out of every 3 women there has a traumatic birth. And this can range just from having, your birth plan doesn't go according to plan, all the way up to stillbirth. About 600,000 women give birth every year in England, and about 30,000 of them develop PTSD after having a baby. They felt that they had interventions that they didn't consent to. They weren't given information to make decisions during birth, ringing the bell, for help from the nursing staff and nobody coming. Just really scary stuff. And it's by no means unusual for this to happen.
We definitely need to up our game globally to help Mothers, this is really sad news. I was just trying to see what it's like in the United States, since this came out of the UK. And National Institutes of Health (NIH) says up to 45% of new mothers experience birth trauma, and the effects can continue long after the birth itself. Now, some of these things that it mentions, though, just like Maggie said, a childbirth experience that doesn't go as you hope, emergency C-section, or things like that, and not receiving the care or support you expect. And I don't know exactly how it fares between the NHS and the United States hospital staff. It certainly is, depends on where you're giving birth. But I definitely can say I know people who've had traumatic experiences in good hospitals. Sometimes it's a premature labor, and who could have planned that? But I know someone who did, and she reached out, and she was very much someone who was a strong, independent woman, and who was like brought to her knees and begged me to visit.
Oh, yeah.
So it's one of those things where you gotta reach out to each other and offer support during those times. And I was thinking even of my own childbirth experiences. The first one was not so great. I remember after that, I went to my sisters. I have 3 older sisters, and said, like, why didn't anyone tell me like it is? This was that, I thought this mind over matter. That wasn't the case. At least it wasn't the case in that birth story for me. And I learned a lot, and I had a different approach for the second birth, and I invited a doula. I still am more comfortable in hospitals, but I had a little bit of both worlds there. And had a better experience the second and the third and the fourth time of having children.
And it's so important to, when women talk, when we share our experiences, that's how, because if you have a bad experience like that, you might think, oh, it's just me,
Like, now I understand why war veterans have their little American Legion post,
Right,
where they
yeah.
go and commune and be like, you get it.
But actually, as this inquiry showed, it can be systemic, where caregivers are not listening to women, or there's just a gap where women and their babies aren't being taken care of the way they should be.
Yeah. And the March of Dimes says on their site, they're encouraging women to share their birth stories. And the benefits are they can help you reframe your experience and give it new meaning, build back your confidence to break the trauma's hold, allow you to connect and engage with other parents, and return to your sense of self. And I think that's so important for moms. And also, like, what if they deep down want to have more children, but this traumatic experience makes it hard for them to even face that? And it's really important to just help women heal. I think we need to just keep on offering better support in mental health and in all areas of support to moms, so that they can live the life they want and not feel hindered. A lot of women are encouraged to get on some kind of birth control. The most recent ones are asking me to have a long-acting contraceptive, like an IUD. Are you kidding me? I just gave birth. Things are tender down there. I don't want to have a foreign object inserted at that time. A lot of women do feel that is sort of a vulnerable moment because they just had an experience giving birth and maybe aren't interested in thinking about children right that second. What if they did want some time to think about it? That's really not giving them that much time to think about it. There's some news that came out on that. I think we're going to be covering it in the next week at verilymag.com. So keep your eye out. Long-acting contraceptive pressures and difficulty getting them removed once you have them. Sometimes insurance covers getting them inserted but not removed. It's really, really rough out there in that area. All in all, what a week. Well, there was a really remarkable story that came about 2 twin sisters. And Maggie, I'll let you take this one because you can relate in some ways to.
Right. So I have a twin. She also has contributed occasionally to Verily, Miss Elizabeth Prendergast. This story is, again, out of the UK. But so these British twin sisters, Georgia and Melissa Laurie, they were on vacation in Mexico, swimming in a river near Puerto Escondido. Melissa saw a crocodile in the water close by. So they started swimming away. Georgia had to jump into the water and save her twin sister from this crocodile. So she just won the King's Gallantry Medal.
Wow.
From King Charles III. which recognizes acts where civilians put themselves at risk to save someone else.
That story is a little too intense to relay more information on the, but suffice to say that sister, which was it, Georgia who saved?
Georgia saved Melissa, yes.
Good, like that endurance that paid off. And you overcame, and wow.
Always nice when that happens. She must have been just on pure adrenaline, because I cannot imagine the courage to go into the water with the crocodile.
May we all have a woman who has our back with as much gusto.
Right. Don't just stand on the bank of the river with a stick
to grab punch the stick, a crocodile in the face on our behalf. May we all have that, lady.
May we know them, may we be them.
Yes. Well, with that, we have wrapped up our news for the week, and we're so thankful to have you joining us. Have a great weekend. This was your voice message while you were out.